All right, so we are going to be doing our next video here. So this one is going to be Mark Hutchison, uh, Price, Richard, and Stewart. Okay, so we're going to start off with Mark, and we are going to hit play. So I believe this is probably from the little sprint section in the warm-up. All right, and we're going to move on to the next one. I think this is actually a power piece. Yep, that definitely sounds like I'm calling a power piece. All right, and now we're going to go to the third video, which obviously right now is a little bit milder. All right, so we're going to go back to video 1. And here we go. So when we come to the catch here, Mark, this is actually a pretty nice catch position. Okay, notwithstanding that our camera angle is from below, so it's going to be tough to kind of see where exactly the shoulder is in relation to the socket as far as vertically. This looks like it's hanging pretty low, right? We got like pretty nice distance between the ear and the top of the shoulder. Nice long extension, good compression. Knee is basically directly above the ankle. We can't see the ankle completely, but like that's right at the ankle. So this is nice compression. Shoulders in front of the hips, very good forward pivot. The ribs are on top of the thighs, but it's not because we're rounding the back. So this is good posture as we do that. So we've got a really nice compressed position, really good amount. We're not over compressing. Now, what we do see here is that we are setting that handle height still somewhat into the drive a little bit. And we can see, look at how much the angle of this chain through the drive. It's coming up, 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 and then it kind of locks in and then it moves down a bit, right? So we want to set that angle just a little bit earlier, right? Set that handle by about here so that as soon as we get here, we can just start pushing it away. Now, we're going to look, where do we start pulling the arms? Where do the shoulders pass the hips? So here we come through, shoulders are still in front, shoulders are still in front, shoulders are past when the legs are here. This is good. We've gotten a lot of engagement out of those lower body muscles, and now we're passing those hips. So we held this angle. Look at this. We're holding this nice body angle well into the leg drive. It looks like there's a little bit maybe of tension being taken by the shoulders here, right? Rather than just letting them like pull forward. And what I mean by pull forward is this. When we come to some of these other people, and we're going to look at a few different people here. Okay, we're looking at Honda Sobrano here. And watch the shoulder. So boom, notice how we see kind of these muscles stretching out, right? They're just hanging in that socket, right? Until he's into his layback position. We're seeing that hang, right? Now, if we go to this guy here from the Australian National Training Center, same thing. We look and we see that muscle there. I think this is the deltoid. I think that's what that one is. Right? Well in front of the body, right? So that shoulder is well forward in the socket, but it's very low. It's below his chin. It's well below the ear. Lots of room there. So as he advances it, it's still hanging. It's still well in front, right? Well in front of where sort of neutral in the socket would be. Well in front. And now as he lays back, it's still hanging. Look at this like nice hang here. And now we're going to see it start to kind of pull back here. So he's already into his kind of layback position by the time he starts to engage these muscles to draw that shoulder back to the body. And now it finally passes, right? So now from there, we are going to go back to you here. And we can see that there's not kind of that same sort of hang, that same hang. We see the arm come down here and then that bend, which means that we've probably got a little bit of tension here, just a little bit at the top where the socket is. So I would say just relax those shoulders a little bit more through that drive. And that's just going to let that arm hang a little longer. It's going to also secure the angle of that chain a little better because we're going to always have that, that maximum hang. So if we're hanging at our maximum through that shoulder, That means the chain is going to tell us, the handle is going to tell us where it wants to be more than us telling it where we want it to be, if that makes sense. But here, like I said, getting a lot out of those legs. We finally pass here. We got a little bit of tension here. Relax them a bit. Now the arms would start bending, drawing it in. And notice here again, we see ourselves coming back on that handle, right? And that's something we've talked about before, right? It's that sort of coming back to the handle rather than bringing the handle to the body. And we see here again, boom, we're bringing those knees up. So we're already kind of, our body's prepping for the recovery. And the knees are coming up here. But we want to actually hold those knees down like that until the hands have drawn in, pushed down. I follow the thigh about halfway down, then straight across. So by the time the arms extend and the body pivots, our hands will be about here on that thigh. They'll be past the knees, moving towards the mid-shin. That's about where those knees are going to start to come up, right? So we can see your knees are starting to come up before you even complete that stroke, right? So keep that connection here because look, here we go. We press it down, keep the toes engaged, and boom, you bring it, see how the toes kind of kick up there just a little bit as the knees start to raise, right? So we lose that little bit of connection. Keep it nice and extended. That's just going to keep very, very good connection, right? When I minimize, I don't know why it's like, whoa, what the heck's going on here? We're going to bring this up. We're going to back this off. All these different... What is going on here? I just want to get a freaking default view. That's what I'm looking for. Default view. Okay. I hate computers with all their different freaking settings and stuff. All right. So now, we're going to go back to default view. And we're going to advance to the next video. So now, this is the high intensity piece. See, and again, we're at this here. Like, all right. Now, as we come up to higher intensity, what we see here is as we come up, there is a tendency to reach for a little more. And see here, this last little bit, watch the arms and the hands right there. We're kind of reaching for a little more. So the slide is barely moving here, right? The slide is barely moving, but the handle moves a little bit more than that, right? I do like this. This is something that I like to see, actually. Look at this here. Look at the way we're sitting on the seat. We come in. We've reached for a little bit more, which we don't want to do. But as we engage, look, boom. See how the bum rises on that seat. So when I say, you know, we want to feel light on that seat, boom. That tells us there that we are connected on the sit bones. We're not really planted with our whole freaking backside sitting on that seat. So as soon as these muscles contract, that contraction kind of lifts us off the seat a little bit. The angle of the foot plate kind of keeps us light on that seat. So this, for anybody else who's watching Mark's thing, this is actually good. Okay, when we see something like this, notice there, he's locked on because he's just floating into the catch, basically. He's not worried about anything, but he's in a good position. And we can see, because we know that he's connected on those sit bones very well, because boom, there's very little connection on that seat, right? There's not a lot of surface area touching. And look at what that good hip position actually lets him do physically with his body angle, right? It has allowed him to get a really nice compression without breaking the back, meaning curving the back a lot. He's still very tall and strong, but it allows him to get a very solid forward angle, which gives him great compression here. Look at how close he gets to the little barricade for the chain, right? So even though it's not like he's 6'2", he's getting amazing length at the catch without overreaching, without getting his body like stretching forward and rounding out. And that's what we want. This is a really nice position on the seat, okay? It's something we rarely see, actually. So this looks really good, Mark. Okay. Now notice the arm is not. See, notice how long it is here, and boom, we see it kind of pull a little bit. So it's taking some of that weight off the drive. We still hold this here good, but we are taking some of that weight with the arms rather than letting it hang like we saw with some of these other people, right? Like we saw with with her, for example, right? Look at this hang on the arms, right? That hang, just very long. We see the muscles kind of stretching out. Same thing with this dude here again. We look at him through that press, right? Look at these. Whoa, what just happened? Oh, that was no good. It's like a weird edit. We'll back up till we see this one here. Boom. Look at how they just hang, right? Look at how it just hangs. Then we come back to here and we see that it's not quite the same, right? It's not the same amount of looseness in that shoulder. But again, shoulders passing the hips, very nice into the leg drive. Draw comes a pretty nice height, but we bring our body back to that handle. See, we bring our body back to the handle. Boom. Right? That's not what we want. That's not what we want. We want to draw that handle all the way to the body. And then here, again, we come in. We should be set with our handle height here, but we're still setting it now. So notice we have a few frames here where we're not really doing much, right? We're not doing much except lifting those hands. We want to have it already in place. Boom, we see that pull with the arms. Okay, we're going to come over here to the third video. And we see basically sort of a lot more of the same, I'll say. Right, a lot more of the same. Very nice position, very nice sort of extension here. But again, we're still setting that angle or that blade height as we're driving. Now it kind of locks in. Right, but look at this chain moving through the first part of the drive where it's coming up the whole time. We're still setting that angle. We're still setting that position through this first part. We hold the angle nice. We see the arms taking a little bit of the weight. Head is up. Body posture's good. We draw to the body. Do we get it to the body or do we come back on the handle? That one was better. That one was better. We still see the body wanting to come back a little bit, but that was better. Down. Nice circle off motion. Excellent. We come mid-thigh. We extend. This was better, right? We got the hands out past the knees. So there you go. So this now is looking good by the end here. But what we saw in these first things, and again, we're picking nits here, right? Because for the most part, this looks very good. This looks very solid stuff. Right, this is good. But now we're looking at it at full pace. Look at the arms, look at the bend of the arm. Look at how we take that weight here. See how the arm goes. And boom, that little pull. And boom, that little pull. Right? So just let that arm hang. Your position is great. Relax that shoulder. Let the bicep just hang. Right? That's going to give you a little better connection on that flywheel. And set that handle just a little bit more before we start that leg drive. Right? Then lock that body position in. Really feel those shoulder blades squeeze around that spine. That full draw to the body. And then down and away. Right? You do that. That's going to be looking very, very solid stuff. All right. We're on to price. All right, and we're going to go on to the next one. And we're going to go on to the third one. Okay, so now we're going to go back to video number 1. Going to maximize this, and here we go. So now, as we come to the catch, notice here, we're almost in a layback position actually as we come up that slide. Now, before we continue on, go and watch the analysis I just did for Mark Hutchison. He was the first one on this video, and watch where we talk about how he's sitting on the slide. And we'll see a really good example of what happens when you're sitting on those sit bones and positionally how we set that body angle. So, and again, I know if people have certain physical limitations because they may have had particular injuries, they have to work around it. That's no problem. We don't want somebody putting them in an injurious position again. But if it's possible, right, try to kind of think about what he's doing because he does it very, very well actually. Is set that body angle. So now as we come up, we're almost in that sort of sitting straight up or layback position. Now we get here and we've got a little bit of over compression. So the knee has passed to the ankle. that is actually probably our full compression point. Now, we're back of the sit bones here, it looks like. Okay, and if we were on the sit bones, so when I sort of think of us being off the sit bones, I almost feel like, okay, great. I'm off the sit bones, and now the plate, the plane that I'm kind of sitting on, my hips are kind of like this. They're like a platform this way. And my body then sits very easily straight above them, right? It's almost a horizontal plane. But if I kick those hips back a little bit to get up onto the sit bones, it kind of turns my hip like this. So that's kind of what I would be sitting on now. And as I come down to this point, boink, there's the sit bones on the seat, right? That angle. But because the angle now has been moved like this instead of like this, that means that my body sits very easily this way in a forward pivot position, right? Now this isn't really what happens. This is how I kind of think of it, and how when I'm thinking of how to position my hips and how to connect the sit bones, this is what goes on in my mind. It may or may not be helpful. So if it's not helpful, you can be like, Derek, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and it didn't help me at all. I won't be offended. But that's what I find, and I kind of feel as I rotate that around, that plane, that horizontal plane, and I rotate it now like 30 degrees up this way, so it's now like this, then that lets me get a little bit better forward pivot. And by doing that, that puts me in a very strong position. So now we see that we are over compressed here. But when we get to over compressed, we see that even here, the body kind of ricochets forward a little bit more over this last little bit, right? And as we come in, are we letting those hands drift up to set the handle height or no? And then we push away, and now see how that chain raises. This first bit of the chain is coming on this line, and then boom, now it raises up to this line, which means that this line is actually our proper position. So we should have had the chain engaged here, let's say, where my cursor is, but we're going to back it up, and we find that it's down below, right? I should have brought my cursor this way, because when we back you to the maximum point here, but it should have been probably about here. And as we go forward, boom, there we go, and we see that that chain comes more up to this. So, as we move through, we see the hand here, see the arms start to take a little bit of weight. We're already kind of sitting straight up, maybe a little bit of layback, where we should still have that nice forward pivot. So if we come here, we're going to go to about, I'll say 3/4 slide. And we look at our shoulder hip angle, okay, which is basically almost straight up and down. That's maybe a little bit forward, right? We may have just a little bit of a forward angle. We're now going to come over here to this guy here on the erg at the Australian National Training Center. Now, much like you, he over compresses. So we're going to forgive him that. But if we back him off to here, we look at that forward pivot. Look at how much forward pivot he has, right? And we see a very similar thing actually with Mark Hutchison, whose body positioning is quite good. So we see this nice position. The body is not rounding to get this compression. It's nice and tall, right? It's hanging very nicely here, right? Good compression. So now we're going to go to about 3/4 slide. So we'll say about there. And we look at the shoulder to hip angle. Right? We're still looking at that shoulder to hip angle. And the shoulder isn't here. Because he's hanging so loose here, we can see that this muscle is pulled way in front of the body. Right? His shoulder's not sitting kind of neutral. It's definitely sitting forward of the torso. So we go shoulder to hip angle, boom, a really nice hang. Now we're going to come back here, and we're at the same position about on here, but we see this, right? So we see a very big difference in how much forward pivot there is. And what that does is that allows him to, as he goes through the stroke, and look at this, he's still hanging, to finally pass the shoulder here when the legs are virtually done, right? So the legs in this position will not be very strong now. They're not going to generate a ton of power from here to fully extended. They're going to generate a lot of power from this point, which is where we want to use them. Now they fade out. Now he lays back, and the body is going to generate more power. So now we see that through the last part here of the legs, where we would want to be moving from the shoulders kind of here to the shoulders in the layback position, the body's not really doing much. The body's just kind of sitting there, and we almost go straight from legs to arms. right? Because the body didn't start off in a really like forward position, and then it went kind of early and it's kind of gone. So we move almost straight from legs to arms. So I generally like to tell people, you know, we can pass, like we can have angles change only a maximum of 2 at a time. And by that I mean, when we come to the catch, we've got the legs angle, we've got the hip angle, and we've got the arm sort of angles, okay, with the elbow, okay? So we can have the legs bent and the arms straight. That's fine. We can have the legs pushing through and then the body angle changing over the hip. So we can have the legs moving down and the body moving at the same time. But we never want to have, and we can have the layback and the arms happening at the same time. But we never want the arms and the legs bent at the same time or straight at the same time, right? We want them always connected through the body angle, never with each other. So as we see here, we see the arms are bending and the legs are bent. So that tells us that we've basically moved too easy. And you see how the elbow angle and the knee angle, they're changing at the same time. So to me, that is kind of like something we want to avoid. Now, they are going to overlap to a very small extent. But again, for visual imagery, I try to kind of say, you know, never let the arms be bent when the legs are bent. Never, you know, when the legs are bent, the arms are straight. When the arms are bent, the legs are straight. That's kind of what I want to think of, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Then as you draw to the body here, we see the body come back a little bit on the handle rather than the handle to the body, but that's not very much. This is nice. I like the way that the shoulders move past the torso here. Look at this draw. Boom. You can tell that those lats are engaged. Those back muscles are drawing it in very nicely. And look how early the knees come up now. Right? So we want to let the knees stay down. So when we again come to this guy here, hopefully he does a good job of this. Now he's doing staged rowing here. It's not like continuous rowing. So let's try here. Final outcome. Now he's just going to, I think, just do regular rowing. Okay. So he comes in. Now, as he progresses forward, he gets the knees coming up probably a little earlier than I would have liked. But I generally like to see the handle get to about here on the shins. That means the arms have extended and we've started a lot of that forward pivot. Then the knees come up. And that means that the hands are already past the knees by the time the knees pop up. And why is that good? That's good because when we get into the boat, that means that we're not going to be putting the blades back onto the water. We're going to keep those blades up off the water. We're going to give ourselves lots of room to roll to the square, place the blades in, and push them away. So that's kind of what we want to do. So here we see the legs start coming up right away, right? Before we're even kind of to mid-thigh. And we want to get this down to mid-thigh, down on the thigh, because that means that we're actually getting the blade out here up and away from the water, up and out of that water, which is what we want. So now when the knees come up, notice how we have to kind of lift those hands up, right? The hands have to kind of come up, up, up to get up and over those knees. And we can't do that because if we're in that forward position, it's a very forward pivot position, it's going to be very hard to do. So that raising of them up over the knees kind of pushes our body back. Now, when we have somebody who doesn't tend to get a lot of forward pivot in the first place, that is that's going to really hamper us in setting that body angle. So what I would very much suggest is when we get to the body here, especially during the warm-up period, because that we're not thinking about splits, we're not thinking about too much of anything, right? The rate is just kind of hold it in this zone, and there's lots of freedom to lower the rate if you want to kind of do something specific. Nobody's going to hassle you about it. But really think of drawing to the body, and then from here, we push down, we go to the thigh, we extend the arm from mid-thigh straight across, and once, like literally look at your handle. When it gets to about halfway to mid-shin, from the knee to mid-shin, about halfway, that is when you can start letting that knee come up. And to get it there, we're going to extend the arm, we're going to pivot the body forward, and then that's going to get us into that position. And then bring it up. And now we kind of know, okay, great. I've got full extension on the arms, and I'm probably getting some forward pivot as it is. Because again, we come up here and boom, notice the over compression. We don't have sort of a really steep angle here, which tells me that we're probably not sitting quite properly on the sit bones, right? So think again about sort of that sit bone position, and that should let us get into a nice forward pivot without having to round the back and strain the back to get into that position. It's more about putting the platform, and the platform being our hips, into an angle that allows our body to still stay strong, just a little bit more forward than where we are, if that makes sense. Here we go. Now, we're going to look at the next one. And again, over compression, which we saw before. As we start bringing it in, notice the arms, there they're long, there it's starting to bend a bit, right? So we're seeing those arms take weight a little bit early, and boom, the knees are already coming up, right? We extend them, boom, and bang. Before we even get to the body, we see how the knees are starting to come up. We're losing that connection, so we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we stay very, very connected. So how do we stay connected? Okay. Oh, and look at this here, right? We're coming into the catch here on this one. So now we're coming in. Look at your handle. Look at your handle. Look at your handle. Where we should be lifting it to place it, it actually drops down. And then we start that drive. Look how low that is. Boom. And now that chain comes back up. So how do we, so be aware of that positioning. So how do we maintain connection, right? We want to think of keeping those toes connected onto the foot plate, the ball of the foot and the toes connected to the foot plate. So as we press it down here, again, if we keep that forward pivot, effectively our weight now is forward. The force is going to be going more onto the toes. It's going to be easier than if we're early into that layback. Now, notice there, we see the toes come off the foot plate there, right? Now, when that happens, when the toes come off the foot plate, that's when we start pulling ourselves effectively back up the slide. Even if we're not pulling ourselves, the force here is now being restrained by the foot strap. So effectively, the foot strap is kind of yanking us back this way because our foot is pulling against the foot strap. The foot strap's not going anywhere, which means the force now has to pull us towards the stern. So as we get to this point here, where we see those toes start to come off right here, right? This part, when the legs are almost done, think about extending those toes, pointing those toes a little bit, and really driving the ball of the foot onto the foot plate. That's going to keep these legs extended and not let them bounce up and pop up early like that. It's going to keep them nice and connected. So that's what I would really focus on for that. So again, we come here, boom, knees are popping up. Keep that nice extension. Look at that. Again, your release position is solid, right? Your head's up, your shoulders move very nicely past the body. You've got good layback, nice draw height. This stuff all looks good. If we get a nice good forward pivot from you, cut the over compression, so compress to there. The extra length we'll get if we get that forward pivot. We're going to get a nice good length here. We're not going to lose any length at the catch, but we'll be in a stronger position when we do engage it. Right? And that's going to allow those strong legs to push away, the quads, the glutes, they're going to drive it back. Hold that angle. Now, remember, when we come here, we're going to run through a few things here, okay? We're going to look at this guy. Coming back to 509, let's say. I think it was 509. Boom. Right? Look at how long he holds those shoulders in front. Boom. Those arms are hanging. Look at that. We're going to move on to the next thing here. We're going to look at Kim Crow. She presses it. Look at how long she's hanging those arms. Shoulders finally past the hips when the legs are almost done. Let's go here. Here she is in action a few years later when she was an even better technical rower. Boom. Look at that body angle hold. She's got good forward pivot. Arms are hanging. Then she lays back. Look at these guys. We're going to bring these guys up. Okay, we're going to take a look at these guys and their body angles through this drive. Look at how they hold. Look at 3-seat on that yellow boat, the Australians, right? Look at where his legs are when his shoulders pass the hips. They're basically flat when he finally passes. This guy here, he's not even passed yet, right? Boom, now he's passing. Look at where these legs are, right? almost dead flat. Look at this guy, where the shoulder passes the hip, almost dead flat. Because they got so much forward pivot, and they save it till the later part of the stroke. We're going to come here. We're going to look at Kettle Borch, and we're going to look at Mahi Drysdale. Here's Borch, close to us. Boom. Where does he pass? Look where his legs are. We're going to look at Drysdale. Where does he pass the hips? Boom. Look where his legs are, right? Very much close to flat. We come to, okay, that might be all the things that I had. Okay. So again, like I said in one of the other analysis videos, and for anybody who's listening to this one, I will say it again. What we want to look for is, there's a lot of different styles out there, right? Some people are like, oh, we want to be stronger at the legs. We want to be stronger at the release. We want to build gradually through the stroke. We want to stop at the release and then be, out of bow later, or stop at the release and then get up the slide a little quicker, or quicker through the release and up the slide a little slower. There's a lot of different sort of techniques, but what I like to look at is commonalities. What are things that we continually see from, top performers that are universal? Because things that tend to be universal tend to be things that matter more. Okay? So when we look at all these athletes, and what we see is that the shoulders aren't passing the hips. They've got a very good forward angle, and that forward angle remains. They don't pass the hips until the legs are almost done. We see that again and again and again and again from person after person after person. Right? So that's something that we want to mimic, because that is something that leads to great success. We can play around with certain other things, but that's a thing that should be pretty solid. So it's worth it. It's worth taking the time in the warm-ups and on the longer steady state pieces, things like that, to really be aware of that body positioning, to really lock it in. Right? Whereas we come up here to the catch, we see that over compression. We see the shoulders up here. Like I say, it's probably a factor of sitting there. Let that body angle go, and here we go, right? Look at this. We're already kind of in an almost layback position at this point here. Hold that in front. That's going to allow the glutes to be way more engaged. It's going to allow these quads to be way more engaged, and that's going to really pay those dividends. And it looks like you're a pretty fit, strong guy, right, when I watch you row. So it looks like there's a lot of muscle in there that we can take advantage of. And the more muscle we got, the more we can take advantage of it. Let's do it. Let's squeeze that stuff out, because that's all speed, right? It's all speed that we can get. So there you go. And then we're going to look at the final one, and we're going to see if we're seeing a lot of the same stuff. See, look at that release position, though. That's solid, right? This is solid. Forearms are flat, wrists are flat, head is up. Like, this looks good. This looks good. If we just get that forward body angle, if we set that handle height, and we watch that over compression. And when I see that much over compression, that tells me that the shoes may be a little bit too low. We may want to raise the shoes, right? A couple notches to see if that will make it a little bit better for you. Although that one wasn't too bad. That last one wasn't too bad. Yeah, but see that you're getting your knee almost over your toes there. So that's probably definitely a little bit too much compression. There you go. So mostly it's body position stuff, especially when we look at forward pivot. That's mostly what we're looking for. So once that gets locked in, that's going to give you a lot of power, and it's really going to solidify the stroke as a whole. Then it's more refinements, because that's sort of the one major thing that jumps out to us. And after that, it's kind of getting very refined, right? Lock that those shins in at 90 degrees, set that body angle, and you'll be looking good. All right. Here we go, Richard. There's video 1. Here's video 2. We're going to take a look. This here is now a power piece. The other one was during the warm-up. And now we're going to go to piece number 3, which again is back to kind of steady state stuff. All right. Here we go. Looking at video 1. When we come into the catch, we see here, this is not too bad, right? We're maybe a little bit over compressed, but this is pretty good. Shoulders in front of the hips, yes, not very much, right? I would like to see a little bit more forward pivot. And this here seems to say to me that we're probably not quite on the sit bones. I could be wrong on that. But when I see sort of the body looking very upright at the catch, that tends to say that we're probably just sitting a little bit over top of our hips, and our hips are kind of a platform for us that's very sort of horizontal down here, rather than kind of kicked back on a bit of an angle, which would allow us to get a little more forward pivot, the shoulders in front of the hips. But like I say, good compression. We got the weight on the toes here. This is what we want. Head is up, eyes are up, shoulders look fairly relaxed. He's in all black, so that's always tough to kind of judge through because it's tough to see what's going on. Now, much like a few other people in the group, right? We're starting that drive, and we're letting those shoulders open. We're letting that body take the weight. So we can see here by 3/4 slide, we're already sort of moving beyond the hips, right? And that's the body taking a lot of that weight rather than putting it on these quads, these glutes, and pressing it away. So that's what we want to make sure that we're doing, is hold those shoulders in front. That's going to allow us to get the most we can out of this. Now, the problem is, and this isn't just for Richard, this is for anybody else who's listening. I'm sorry, I'm just going to take a drink here. My throat is starting to get pretty sore. All right. This is for everybody else who's listening, is when we first make that change, we will find that we actually get more tired. We probably go a little slower, and we get tired faster because the legs haven't been asked to do that much, right? They haven't been asked to take the same load as we're going to put on them. But what we're going to do is, if our cap, our ceiling is kind of here, then we make that change. Our ceiling, or our actual performance, goes down here. But while we're sort of, our performance is coming down and those muscles are like going, oh my God, I'm so tired, I can't keep this up, our ceiling is starting to rise because positionally we will be more sound. And once the muscles then start getting stronger and more powerful, and they're used to taking that load again and again and again, and they start getting strong, they're going to start building up to catch that new ceiling, and that's going to make us faster over time. Right? But when we watch this, we see that body opening very early and then drawing it in. That's a nice draw height, though. That is a very nice draw height. Boom. We see that nice, good, like the chain doesn't get sloppy as we're drawing it. So there's good connection on the chain. We're going to move to this here. The other thing that really jumps out... The other thing that jumps out to me here with Richard is this. And this is something that I don't see very often, actually. Is as we start the drive, see the chain actually drops down. Most people, the chain is raising while we're driving. Richard sets that handle height a little bit too high as he comes in. And then he drops back into place. Then it kind of comes back up to resettle onto an effective height. So that tells us that we're getting a little bit of disconnect at the catch. That first bit, right? See here, it's not connected. Now it's connected. It had to make that first adjustment, the second adjustment, and now it's good. So until about here, we're actually not really, probably about here actually. We're not really getting great connection on that flywheel because here it's still coming into position. Now it's locked in. So there. So we're getting strong connection, but it's not as strong as we can be, which is what we want. We want to maximize that compression. The bad thing about missing that connection is that when we're doing it, that is all, in theory, going to be leg drive. That's all quads and glutes, that first part of the stroke. So we're losing out on some of the most powerful muscles that we can possibly have. Now, some of that is mitigated by the fact that Richard opens the body a little bit early. So, his legs were already a little bit nerfed to begin with. But ultimately, what we want to do is make sure that that's kind of locked in, right? And just make it a little more secure. And we can see here as that handle drops down, the arms are bending to take that weight as well. And this is something that we often see when people open the body early, is the arms bend early as well because they're taking the weight, because the amount of force that is being, sort of used by the body to get this flywheel back up and moving, the body isn't designed to take it as much as the legs. So when the body is taking it, it often recruits the arms. It often kind of gets extra help from the arms, and they make that pull, right? So that's why we very often will see kind of the two things go together. Sometimes it's just one or the other. And we can see now when we get to kind of this position here, the arms are bending. We're in our layback position, and we've got the legs going down. We've also got disconnect on the shoes. But we are going to come here, and we're going to look at some people actually rowing. And we're going to look at this one here. So we're going to say, here's Kettle Borscht and Mahi Drysdale. And we're going to kind of see what they look like when they get to a similar position of leg drive. Now, we're going to come back here. So when the shins are down here, we're in our layback position, arms are bending. Here we go. We're going to advance this forward. And here we go. So when the shins are about, I think it's about there, wasn't it? No, it's probably back a little bit even. So when it's about here kind of thing, we're already in sort of the layback, even if it's here. We're in that layback position with the arms bent. But we can see here that that forward angle is still holding, arms are still long. The arms start to bend now. The legs are down. We're still not past the hip. Now we're past the hip. Legs are almost flat. Arms are just bending a little bit. Right? So we can see that difference. We're going to go and look at Drysdale now. Same thing. If we kind of look at the same position of the legs, we're going to go there. We're going to come to here. Probably about there. Right? Shoulders still in front of the hips. Arms are still hanging very nicely. Where does the shoulder pass? Probably right about there when the legs are very close to being done. Arms are still nice and hanging. And now they start to draw it in. And when we see this here, and when we see kind of how he's levering, and we're going to talk specifically Mahi Drysdale, although Kettle Borscht as well is still rowing pretty nice, we can see this particular race, he has a massive comeback, right? He has it was almost like he was dead in the water, and then suddenly he comes back. But we can see he keeps generating power by using that body progression, by keeping the shoulders in front of the hips, by keeping the arms hanging, and by letting those legs drive it away. And when we talk about sort of, letting that the performance go down while we're building the ceiling up, this is what we're talking about sort of ultimately getting to, is something like this where we can keep that proper progression to allow that power to really get through to the ends. Now, we've got erg competitions coming up right away, so don't worry about making these changes right now, right? Just keep doing what you're doing. But this is something that long-term we want to work on, because we want to keep pushing that ceiling up and pushing that ceiling up and pushing that ceiling up. Now we're going to look at the video number 3. This is a nice draw height to the body. This is good length. Boom, look at this. So this is nice, drawing to the body, and we can actually tell that as we draw it in, boom, that body is not coming back to meet the handle, right? But likewise, we can see here as we back up, we're already almost in our final layback position here with lots of drive left to go, right? So the first part is opening the body, the arms are bent, so it's the upper body doing all this work. And the legs they're adding something, but they're not the primary propulsion. They're not the things that are driving it, right? And when we come to the catch again, we see the handle gets set a little high, it resets down, and then it comes back up. So think about that placement. This is not bad, right? A little over compressed, nothing too bad. So as we come up here, notice the time that we spend at the catch here, though. Right, so we come in here, then boom, 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 and now we're pushing it away. So we're probably just like an extra frame than we need to be here, thinking about that quick turnaround time. I like how the head is up, though, right? Head is up. We're not letting the chin drop. This stays nice. Shoulders look relaxed. As much as I can see them with the black outfit. The main thing, honestly, the main thing I would say is getting that body angle, setting that hit, sitting properly on the slide, getting that nice forward pivot, and then holding that angle through the leg drive, then laying back against it. You got a ton of power in your body. Like your torso is very strong. That you can generate the speed you do and the power that you do with sort of opening the body and taking it with the body is really impressive. So if we can then subsequently add to that the amount of power we can get from your legs through that first half to 3/4 of the stroke, that is really going to be fast, right? That's going to give you great speed, great power as we go through that stroke. So long term, that's something that I would really focus on working. If you want to raise that ceiling as much as possible, that's where I would do it. Right? That's where I would do it, is really thinking about holding those shoulders. In the boat, I think also about lengthening the catch, as we've talked about some. But other than that, it's looking pretty solid stuff, right? You're looking very strong. Finish position here looks good. We're not seeing as much of the feet come disconnected to the foot plate as we used to, and we're seeing a nice amount of compression. So there you go. All right, finally we are on to Stu. Here we go, Mr. Stewart. We are going to watch your first video here. And we're going to move on to video number 2. And this one is, I believe, a power piece. That's definitely going to be a power piece. And we got, just the 2. Okay, so now we are going to come here and we're going to take a look at this. Now this is during our warm-up period. What we're going to see here is look at where the elbows are as we draw to the body. Right? Look at where these elbows are. So, as I've said to some other people, when the elbows are tucked against the body, that means that we're going to be using more bicep to pull that handle in than we are going to be using those good, strong back muscles. Now, this can happen because we either have very strong biceps, or we are just not used to using those muscles, or we are weak in the back muscles. So generally what it is a combination of 2 and 3. It's usually that we get in this position because we're not used to using those back muscles and not familiar with how to engage them. And and the second reason for that, obviously, is because they're not getting used and we're not used to it, they're not strong. So when we do engage them, we feel them get tired very quickly. Now, when we look at people here, so we're going to bring up, where is it? Mahi Drysdale and Kettle Borscht. Okay, and just before this time here, there was a section, here we go, where we're going to look at Borscht, and then we're going to look at Drysdale. And as they come through the release. Now, look at how his elbows are. Boom, boom, out, right? We're going to advance it a little bit. And look at Drysdale. Elbows out, right? They're not tucked against the body. So as we come forward, boom, boom. Now, here we go, close up. So again, we see this, the traditional classic V shape in a lot of rowers because these lats are very strong. And they're strong because they use them, right? They allow them. So as those elbows go out a little bit, we see how, you can see the muscles underneath here, how those muscles are being used to draw that handle to the body, right? So that's what's taking it. And watch again, the elbows come out, the elbows are out. Boom. That's going to keep it. And if we look through, we can see it here. His hand is almost at the same place as his lat, okay? But if we are thinking of the arm and what we're going to do, if we have our arm in this position, okay, if we just sit there and put our arm in that position with the elbow out and the forearm in that position as though we're drawing it. But now we're going to pretend, okay, I'm going to do curls with my arm like that. The arm won't be able to do curls very good because it's not a strong position for the bicep, right? But it is a strong position for these muscles, okay? Because this takes the weight off, let's say the weight, it takes the focus off the bicep and allows it more onto here. It's more drawing it in here, which engages these muscles. If we drop this elbow down, We can do curls like that all day. You go to the gym and you see people doing curls with their arms sort of tucked beside their body, just hanging nice and loose, and they're lifting the weights because that is a very effective place to put the weight and put the arm to get the bicep engaged. So we don't want that though, right? We don't want that. Now we're going to come up and we're going to see Mahi Drysdale here a bit. Here we go. So again, elbows out. And look, we can see how sort of engaged this muscle is. Because those arms are out, look at this here, right? Boom and bang. There, look at that. Look at how those this muscle kind of comes around right there, right? It's squeezing it around. But that's only because these elbows get out. So, when we come back to here and we see this, we know that this is going to be more of a bicep pull than a back pull. And this is why I like to say, you know, we have legs, lay back, draw, rather than legs, back, arms. Because it's never just legs, back, and arms. And in fact, I don't even like to think of the arms as doing anything. I like to think of the back muscles drawing the handle to the body rather than the arms pulling to the body. This is the arms pulling to the body. So let those elbows get out a little bit and really keep that connection through the back. Right? So now we're going to frame forward and we see right away, as soon as the handle starts moving away from the body, the legs are coming up, right? And now the handle passes the legs when the legs are already like coming up. So we don't want that to happen because by having the knees come up, that means the hands have to stay high. And if the hands have to stay high on the erg, nobody cares. It's not a big deal. But if the hands stay high in the boat, then that means that the blade is staying low. The blade is on the water. So by letting the legs stay down and we push the handle down to the thigh, this is the other thing that we don't see, right? We come in and this handle now should push down to the thigh and then come out straight across from the thigh, okay? But it doesn't. It doesn't push down to mimic any kind of extraction of the blade. So we effectively didn't even take our blade out of the water on that stroke, right? And then, like I say, then it doesn't matter that the knees come up. But if we push the handle down, we extend the arms, and then we pivot forward, that handle, our hands, if we are sitting there with our legs in front of us and we look at midway down our shin, halfway from that point to our knee, that's about where we want our hand to be before those knees start coming up. Because that means now that we've extended the arms and we've pivoted forward, and now we are in position to come up that slide and hold that body angle until we get to the catch. So that's going to make it a very smooth, controlled, effective release and recovery. So all we have to worry about once those knees start coming up is controlling our approach to the catch. However, here, as we're coming up, we're still thinking about extending the arms. We're still probably setting some of the body angle. We come in here and then we push it away. Now, I can't really see, but let's see here. Actually, maybe I can see. Yeah, so here we go. So we start to push away. There we go. And there is where we're actually connected. Not here, not this first bit, but there. And here's how we can tell. Because we're not placing this handle into proper position before we start the drive. So if we look at the chain here, we start our drive now, but look at the chain and notice it's going low, low, and boom. Now it sort of snaps up and then it locks into place, right? So until we see this little snap up, bang, there. And when we look at the handle, boom, see how it kind of like jumps up a little bit. That tells us that now we're connected. So we've already started our drive, but this first bit here, we're not really connected. We're moving the flywheel, but not as much as we could for the power that we're applying. Then once it's in and locked in, now we're actually really connected, right? Then as we draw it in, let those elbows come out, engage the back, hold the knees down, push down, extend the arms, then bring the knees up over top of them. Now, from this angle, it's tough to see if you're reaching for more, but it does look like there might be a bit of overcompression. And it looks like right there that there's probably a little bit of reach, right? Which is just as we get to the catch, because we don't see much movement on the slide. We don't see the shins moving that much, but we see a fair bit of movement here in the upper body. So I would tend to gather that you are reaching for a little bit more there. And then boom, see the chain snaps back up. So now coming on to the next video, we're going to go back here. And this is the power piece. Okay, so as we come into the catch, again, we're going to look at the chain. Boom. See how it's raising as we're driving, as we're well into this drive. We're connecting through the drive, not prior to the drive. So that first bit, until we see that chain kind of lock into position, that's all disconnected power, right? It's not as effective as we want. So we're, getting probably a quarter of the way through our slide before we're really connected like we want. Then I can't see when the shoulders are passing the hips. That's very tough to tell. Coming in, and you can even kind of see right about here, it's very much in the arm. It's very much in the bicep as we're pulling it now, rather than in the back, right? You can just see that arm pulling, right? So if we look, boom, see how it's pulling it in rather than drawing it in with the back, if you know what I'm saying. And now, as we get to the body, when we see something like this tells us that we might be coming back on that handle just a little bit. We come up, knees are coming up instantly, handle stays high, so we come over top of them rather than setting into position. And there, see that chain raising through this first part of the drive, right? That's disconnected power right here. Disconnected, now it's power, right? Now it's locked in. But by then, we've already used a lot of those quads and glutes, right? Those quads and glutes are what we want. So when we come in, we want to think, where is this here? Here we go. Through that drive, look at how he holds this here, right? Very relaxed in those arms, but as he draws it in, boom, then, oh yeah, this here. Notice he mimics the extraction down to the thigh, and his knees still aren't coming up. Now they start to come up, which to me is probably a little bit early, but not much. But he's almost got those arms fully extended by the time the knees start to come up, right? Oops, wrong button. Here we go. And now he comes up, he keeps the handle nice and low, he's got the body position set, and all it is a matter of coming up. Now, I think he should stop about here. This is full compression. This guy tends to over-compress. But again, we look, he's sort of setting that height a little bit in advance. I think he could set it just a little bit earlier. And then we had a skip of the video. Sets it, and boom, pushes it away. And look at how early this power gets connected, right? When he starts pushing away, do we see the jump up and down of the chain? So now he starts pushing, and we're going to look at the height of the chain. That one little teeny bit, and then it's basically locked in, right? Look at how he holds that. Boom, all the way through. So we compare that to what we kind of see on the chain here through the first part of the drive. We come in, and now it bang. See how far? Look at this, right? From here, it's kind of now connected. So all these frames, I'm going to back it up now. All those frames there, we're still actually getting connection. And that's all leg power, right? That's all the good, powerful stuff that we want. So for you, Stewart, honestly, the main thing I would say is think about setting that handle height, holding that body angle, and really getting nice application of force right from the start point. Holding those knees down, let the handle go down, get past the knees, and then raise the knees. And number one thing, keep this engaged. Let those elbows go out a little bit. Think of this video here with, where is it here? Think of this video, right? Think of what we see from Mahi Drysdale here. And this is something, like I said in other videos, I look for commonalities. We want to sort of see what is it that virtually everybody who's really good does the same. What are things that we see again and again and again from high-level performers, okay? So we look at Drysdale. His elbows are going way out. We're going to look at Kettle Borsch. Okay, we're going to come to him. Here he is. We're going to look at him through the release. Boom. Look at these elbows. Way out. We're going to look at Kim Brennan. We're going to see her from head on. As she comes to the body. Boom. Elbows are out. Right? We're going to look at... Do I have anybody else that's head on? No, I don't think so. Okay, we have this guy. This again is Hannes Obreno. And we'll see if we have a, here we go. So we're going to look at him as he comes through. Boom. Let's check these elbows. Bang. Look at them. This is something I love to see, actually. This, I wish I'd actually sort of noticed or paid, marked it down, paid attention to it earlier. This is what I like to see. Through that draw, I like to see elbows at or above the shaft height, right? Look at this. At the shaft, a little bit above. But look at how open this is, right? Look at how open this is. So when we start sort of scrolling through from person to person to person, and if we went through this Rio replay, if we looked at the other women in this race as well, if they showed them head on, we would see very similar things for a lot of these other women. We'd see the elbows going out, right? If we looked at a lot of these other performances by, Borsch and some of the previous rounds, we would see a gain and a gain. This is one of the things that is very common, right? And by common, I don't mean we see it a lot. I just mean it's common to each person, right? We see it amongst high performers at every level. So that's what we want to mimic. So think of that image as you're drawing it through. Your performance may initially suffer because those muscles are not used to taking that load. But over time, they're going to start building up stronger. They're going to get better. They're going to get more adept at doing it. And we're going to see ultimate improvements in speed. And that's what we want. So there you go. So that's it for these videos. If anybody has any questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to ask. You're always more than welcome to do so. All right. And I think that's it. Have a good day.